and we on with special guest Tanaath. And one of the things that I wanted to say, and one of the reasons why Tanaath agreed to be on the show again today, is because she wanted to show you guys that we would still be here in 2013.
Oh, yeah. We're still alive. And actually, I've heard that, you know, a lot of people are disillusioned by the fact that nothing happened on the 21st and basically rage quit the whole movement because of it. Well, just because nothing happened on the arbitrary date set by the cabal and by the Greys and by the enemies does not mean that nothing is happening. That date was planted. It was planted deliberately to create fear, and since they weren't able to pull off their mass disaster, the secondary effect of it is everybody now thinks, oh, nothing happened, nothing's going to happen. That's not the case. Get this 2012 stuff out of your head. It was never important. At any rate, December 21st, 2012 was not important from a big boom boom fireworks standpoint. Its importance was far more subtle and far less immediately visible, but important in terms of, well, energetically speaking, we've won. Now we just have to play the rest of the game to the finish line.
Tanaath, where are we in our awareness? How does the Silver Legion view where our awareness is of everything, I guess, in 2013? What can we expect?
In 2013, what can we expect? I don't know. Expect the unexpected. You know, like Anonymous says, expect us. But I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen because I don't know. I do know that we're going to keep working. And I do know that the other side is not going to give up easily. They are genetically programmed not to quit, which means we probably are going to have to do the very, very unpleasant task of driving them entirely into the dirt. But we can do it. We've done it before. Not a problem. I do think that we can probably expect to see some changes this year. What kind, I don't know. Major changes would certainly make me happy. It might be more subtle than that. If it is more subtle than that, I can deal with that as well. One thing that I'm going to stress is nobody panic. No matter what things look like, don't panic. It's never as bad as the mainstream media spins it. It's never as bad as Alex Jones spins it. Remember, a lot of the alternative media is just as controlled as the mainstream. And I'm not saying that's the case with Vegas All Net Radio, and I'm certainly not saying that's the case with the Talk with Vince show, but be aware that a lot of these really, really big-ticket alternative news sources like Alex Jones are controlled. They're either doing it consciously or because they're coerced, or they're doing it out of fear, but they're doing it.
And so there is a lot of fear-mongering that's going on.
Oh, definitely.
And they have to continuously reinvent the wheel, so to speak, when things that they've said are going to come to pass that have not come to pass.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's one of the reasons that we don't give ETAs, because we know things change. We have to be able to roll with the punches. If we promise something and we can't deliver, that's a problem.
Now, when you speak of the cabal, how entrenched are they at the very top levels of government?
Well, without being able to name names or go into too much detail, I would say that it's safe to say it's thoroughly infiltrated. I don't know who all the individuals are. My people do have that information, but I'm not privy to it. It's very, very compromised, not just in the U.S., but pretty much everywhere. All the Western governments are majorly compromised. Most of the other governments in the world are majorly compromised. However, there has been efforts made by some countries to rid themselves of this. One country in particular is often highly demonized in the United States, and this country is a lot more free than we ever thought, and has always been a lot more free than we've ever thought.
How many...
Propaganda aside.
Yeah, can you give us a percentage of how many people that are walking around that may be Draco reptilians or shapeshifters and not know it?
Nope. I can give you the general percentages in terms of how much of the average human genetics is Draco-reptilian. The average human being, non-cabal, contains between 5 and 10% reptilian genetics. This is part of how they affected our own genetic code in order to bring about certain effects such as shortened lifespan, certain when we refer to things like the reptilian hindbrain and our base instincts, a lot of that comes from the reptilian genetics that were inserted into the human genetic code. So the average human being has between 5 and 10% reptoid genetics. Now, before anyone freaks out about that, nobody judges you on this. It doesn't make you a bad person. The genes don't make you a bad person. There's still, between 95 and 100% other genes in there. There are a few people here with no reptoid genetics, and I don't know how they managed that, but they did. Whatever your genetics are is only a starting point. It is not a controlling factor. Now, in order to qualify as cabal, you have to have, at bare minimum, I think, between 15 and 20% reptoid genetics. And that gets you in as like low-level grunts and bully boys.
Really?
Now, some people have as high as 50%. Higher than that, and the human part of the genetic code starts to become unstable. So they generally try to mix in what they call a little commoner blood at that point in order to keep the mix stable so you don't have, anything really, really obvious happening in public, because all of this works in secrecy.
Now, there's a lot of people that are walking around with probes that are unaware that they have these probes.
Not so much probes. If you have a probing, you're usually pretty aware of it. You're talking about implants. And
yeah,
yes, there are a lot of
yes.
people running around with implants who are unaware of the fact. Some of those are physical. Some of those are non-physical.
And this is what allows them to see what we see, hear what we hear, in essence.
It has different implants do different things. Some implants are there to control. They're there to provoke certain behaviors. A lot of MK Ultra candidates, for instance, have implants that reduce a lot of rationality and basically provoke, or even outright mind control. Some implants are there as monitoring devices. Some implants are there as tracking devices so that they know where to find you if they want to pick you up again. Some implants are there in order to provide, again, a different kind of tracking device, more like a device that permits energy to go through the person who's implanted to the surrounding area or the people around them. So basically a Trojan horse type thing. So there's implants that do many, many different things. And then there's implants that are planted by the military-industrial complex and not planted by Greys or reptilians directly. Plus, some of the positives use certain implants under consent, meaning that they will ask you, or first they will tell you what the implant can and can't do. They will tell you any risks and harms or potential benefits for you, and then they will ask you if that's what you want. And if you say, yes, I wish to have this implant, then they'll give it to you.
An incident that happened where they were talking about China and the U.S. being involved in a firefight with Draco reptilians in a deep undersea base. You have any knowledge of what happened during that time? And is the U.S. at war now? With
the U.S. has been at war for a very long time. I can't really comment on that incident other than to say that a lot of the information that got out to the public was incorrect. I would recommend Tolik's site for that, the www.andromedacouncil.com. He does actually discuss that event. From our perspective, somebody made up a bunch of disinformation and sent it out.
Okay. And who are we at war with in the heavens? Because I know that the U.S. is the U.S. engaged in some type of war in the heavens right now?
In the heavens, no. They don't have the required technology to be at war with the heavens.
I mean in space. Are they involved in some type of are they involved in some type of war in space right now?
There is a war in space. It's mostly not being fought by Terrans.
Who's it being fought by?
Mostly by the Liberation Forces and the forces behind the enemy, which include, but are not limited to, the Draco, the Hydra, the Greys, all varieties of Greys. We have not yet met a true positive Grey. Most of them are backstabbing little monsters, and when we give them a chance, we usually end up with a knife in the back, so we do so very carefully.
Now,
other races
Hydras
have become involved recently, too, including some that even I thought weren't able to access this universe. In other words, I recognized them from works of fiction and thought, hey, what the heck are these things doing here? They're not supposed to exist here. However, not supposed to doesn't seem to have reached their memo desk, so we're dealing with them all the same.
Now, you mentioned Hydras. What are those?
Hydras are another form of negative reptilian. The Hydra, you can think of the Draco as the military branch and the Hydra as the political and spiritual branch. Hydras are different in physical build, where Draco tend to be large, heavily muscled, tall, and more humanoid in build. The Hydra tend to be more dragon-looking, although they're not dragons. This is genetic engineering in order to mimic dragons. They usually have wings, longer tails. They're more slender. Their faces are more lizard-like. They often have longer horns. And they usually choose to appear hooded. They often like to wear hooded robes. And they like it a lot hotter than we do.
Now, where are they from?
They're from the Hydra constellation, hence Hydras.
Mm-hmm. Do they have a specific, what's the name of their planet? Is there a specific planet? Is there a name for their planet that they're on? And
probably. I don't know this, though. I don't know the name of their planet. Usually when we raid, we don't really care what it's called. We know what it looks like, we know where it is, and we know how to cause trouble.
Tanaath, recently, the Silver Legion was involved in a war where they provided help to the Andromeda Council. First, I want you to talk about is I want you to describe a reptilian before we get into the
reptilians.
War. Yes.
No, there are several different versions of reptilian, and we have interaction with two and combat interaction with one, the Draco. And I'll tell you what I've experienced them as looking at, as they look like they're bipedal. They stand on 2 feet. Their feet are clawed. Their hands are clawed. And they have opposable thumbs. They have pebbly skin of multiple colors. That is slightly, they're more earth-toned compared to the Hydra, who are very, very colorful. They're heavily muscled. They don't have external ears. They have reptilian eyes, generally gold, green, other colors like that, especially the Draco. The Hydra are better at mimicking humans than the Draco are. The Draco are huge. They're about, if you were to stand beside them, they would dwarf most basketball players. Heavily muscled, heavy creatures. They have tails, thick muscular tails. They are the combat cast of the reptilians' systems, and they are also the ones that go out in the ships, blow things up, attack, attack and conquer, things like that. The Hydra are the other group that we have interaction with, and they're more involved in manipulation, trickery, and getting people to do what they want.
Now, did the reptilians create the Greys?
I don't believe they created them. What I understand is that they enslaved them and modified them.